And we are so excited to go all into a conversation tonight around local economic development. We all know that the city is not just a collection of neighborhoods and places and spaces, but that our businesses hold culture, they provide commerce, goods and services, places for us to meet and catch up with friends and get what we need to sustain life, right? And sometimes they're fun places to go, and they build character and identity and community. And so we are here tonight to talk about how that issue and that topic plugs into and is a part of the broader conversation as our city updates its comprehensive development plan, also known as Plan A. I do want to flag for everybody in the room that our next meeting, we have topic like issue-based conversations. We had one on urban design last week. This week is local economic development. Our next one will be November 18th on historic preservation. So please mark your calendars and plan to join us for what will, I'm sure, be a lively conversation around that topic. So we have the pleasure of hearing tonight from some folks who have some real experience on the ground in our local business districts throughout the city of Atlanta. And our moderator on my far side here is Dr. Alan Peterson with Invest Atlanta. There he is, the Assistant Director of Ecosystem Development. And I'm going to just let them introduce themselves, and we look forward to hearing what you all have to share with us. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Myrna Fuller, the president of the West End Merchants Coalition.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Delp. I operate Carver Neighborhood Market and Community Grounds just around the corner, and I've lived in this neighborhood of South Atlanta for the last 20 years.
Hey, I'm Lakeisha. I'm the owner of Pink Pathos, a plant-based, plant and retail service shop located over at Pittsburgh Yards.
Wonderful. Well, good evening again, everyone. Alan Peterson, Assistant Director of Ecosystem Development for Invest Atlanta, and I deal primarily with business attraction and business retention and expansion, and I oversee our Atlanta Open for Business program. That's a $20 million grant and loan program that we received from Wells Fargo, and it's also a partnership with United Way. So we're going to jump right into it. So question number one. What is the role of the neighborhood commercial district? How do they add to life and connection within our neighborhoods and across the city?
I guess I start. I think we're kind of the glue that maintains the neighborhood, the residential as well as the business neighborhood around us that makes up the whole. So it's more than just being able to access goods and services. It's the place where people can come and feel comfortable getting to know each other. You can go to the neighborhood bar and you know the bartender. You can go to the clothing store. You have someone that knows exactly what it is you're generally looking for. And it's the place where community comes together, where community gets to coalesce and know what the community is all about. It's where historical knowledge is passed along. It's where you get to know kids, and it's just the glue.
I would 100% agree. South Atlanta, while this is an amazing community and something I've loved, has not had a commercial district for a long time, and we actually are starting to create one along with the Beltline. But when you don't have one, you recognize what you miss, right? And so where do you get to know people? Where do you go out of your house? Where do you run into students from Carver High School and teachers and neighbors? And that happens in cafes, happens not at the grocery store. I'd actually argue the grocery store and schools are the two best community building places in our neighborhoods, right? And so having a centralized place where people can walk to, can bike to, can take the bus to, can drive to, where you know the person behind the counter, where they know you. When someone walks into Carver Market, we usually know half the things they're going to buy before they get them in the cart. And that's so important to building identity and building community and building relationships with our neighbors.
+1 to all of that. But on the small business side, I think it's important just to have a place where other small businesses can really get together and be able to afford commercial real estate. You know, it's harder when you're in a silo by yourself, and when you're in a commercial district, everybody can work together to build each other's businesses up. Because we're at a time where we're no longer having to dig ourselves out of the mud, and we're needing to work together and collaborate together so we all can be successful, and the local community can support everyone within that district.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned small businesses, Lakeisha, and I want to start with you with this next question. How have small businesses benefited from the programs specifically for small businesses?
So I personally was involved in the Atlanta Beltline Marketplace. That's how I got my start. When I was getting ready to start business in Atlanta, I was looking at commercial real estate and looking how expensive it was. And they offered us an opportunity to start business on the Beltline at an affordable rate. I think that was such an amazing opportunity because that did give me a head start. I was able to afford to start my business, supply inventory to my business, and being able to feel comfortable in making my lease payments every month because they weren't so expensive. So I didn't have to stress myself about that. You know, I feel like if I wasn't having the ability to do that, you know, just trying to get someone to allow you to have a lease without actually having a business, having, you know, actual revenue from a business, because I was literally starting from ground zero. And when you have resources like that, that allows the small businesses to really feel comfortable, you know, putting their foot in and jumping 2 feet in, because the goal is to eventually to go full time.
Sure, yeah, so Invest Atlanta and the Atlanta Beltline both have been great partners. We've gotten a facade grant from the Beltline. We've gotten, Invest Atlanta has the mayor, through the mayor of Atlanta, has an emphasis on supporting small grocery and figuring out how to do small grocery, and so we've been able to access some funds that way. Also thinking about infrastructure and how people get to our store, and so we're a stone's throw from the Beltline, and we have a MARTA route on our right in front of our store that didn't have a bus shelter, so we worked with MARTA to get a bus shelter put in across the street so our customers can actually sit and not in the sun or in the rain. So I would argue having business or businesses to be able to go to the city or to lobby the city, it makes it a much more effective ask and pitch. And so it's been great working, great partners to work with.
And we've been able to benefit from 2 different sides. So we certainly have called upon the Beltline, Invest Atlanta, and the City of Atlanta to help us help our businesses, because that's why we exist as an association. From the flip side, as an association, we have been granted not just funding, but expertise to help us flourish within our own organization. So through the City of Atlanta, we were selected with several other business districts to belong to the Main Street program. And that's grown to another program which is called Living Cities, and B3, which stands for Breaking Barriers to Businesses. And if it wasn't for the City of Atlanta providing us with the guidance to walk us through over these years, through those programs, we wouldn't have been able to do and to continue to do what we do for our small businesses. With the Beltline, same thing. They have a program where they bring CIDs and business associations together on an ongoing basis to give us exposure to the various aspects of development that we would need to be mindful of. And then we have Invest Atlanta, who, as you all know, is just a springboard for helping small businesses, and they've just awarded us a grant, a $60,000 grant for capacity building for our organization. So all 3 organizations are just really on the forefront of helping small businesses through various means.
So I haven't personally gotten any financial funding from the City of Atlanta or Invest Atlanta, but I did fill out an application for Invest Atlanta, and there was the resource for help with that application. And I did have a personal advisor guide me through that whole process. That was amazing because being a new business owner, a lot of that information I just didn't know. So it allowed me to navigate through that application process seamlessly.
Absolutely, and that leads to the next question. I want to start with you, Myrna, because you deal with a lot of new businesses, and you touched on it. What are some of the barriers that new businesses face, whether it's navigating systems, finding out where that funding is?
Well, a lot of it is they don't know what they don't know. So you have to really build relationships with entrepreneurs, with small businesses, and as you work with them and talk to them, then there's some things that come up that you can say, well, did you know about this? And they're like, no. So that opens the door to take steps to bring in organizations like the City of Atlanta's Planning Department, the Beltline, and Invest Atlanta. So the barriers start with, yes, what they don't know, but then navigating, as you said, systems, like, just getting a business license. So we're working on streamlining the information about some of those systems. We're not in the departments to actually make the change, but if we can look at how they structure things and we can simplify that and help our small businesses navigate systems, then we feel like we'll have done part of our job.
Particularly if we're talking about brick and mortar, is finding quality and affordable retail space. And so one thing, as we all know, our city's changing, right? And change always happens, and change can be good, change can be bad. But how do we empower and create an environment where those who have lived in our neighborhoods for a very long time get to participate and benefit from the change that's coming instead of just being pushed out? And too often in our neighborhoods on this side of town, the business district has been empty for a long time, and the buildings are not up to code, and it can't be used as a business, or there's not enough people living by to support a business. And so really is seeing the vision and having the opportunity to take advantage of what's coming, much of what you said, without breaking the bank and without going through a lot of stress of like, man, how am I going to afford this, right? Versus waiting 5 years. So there's tons of businesses out there who are waiting, right? Waiting for them to come, right? And once the economics for those big businesses make sense, they're going to come. But those of us who live here now want businesses here now, not when it makes sense for a Chick-fil-A or a Publix or a Starbucks to come. We want to be able to enjoy it now. And how can we do it in an affordable way with what we have currently?
So I just want to piggyback on what Myrna said. For me as a small business, just finding the resources. A lot of my small business friends as well are always looking for opportunities for grants or for easy ways to get income, because a lot of us are transitioning out of 9 to 5s to start our business. Where do we find these resources? How do we get a business license? It would be nice if there was just, a portal that could just kind of navigate us through all of the various different steps and options that are available to us.
And I'm going to start with Jeff, but Lakeisha, you, once again, the next question. So what can city partners, city partners, whether it's Invest Atlanta, the City of Atlanta actually, or the Beltline, or the Chamber, our funders, what can we do to better assist the small businesses?
I think there's a ton of resources that are out there, and it's just hard to know. One is scary, right? This, as you're thinking about where do I go, if there's a portal, can I qualify? And so I think there's a ton, always education. What can we educate about what is already there. Because there's a ton of stuff there that even as someone who operates a business, I don't even know all that's available, right? And so that's always a piece. And I think why this is called the comprehensive development plan, right? Like, we have to look at our city comprehensively, from housing to transportation to small business, education, right? It's all connected, and it's not one, we can't just fund this here and give a grant here and expect that that's going to be a magic bullet that's going to solve everything. At times, there can be very targeted things where you can do, but particularly for our under-resourced communities, like, we have to think about the whole thing holistically and look at it from all aspects to give small business a chance to thrive. But I would say the biggest thing would be education.
I would definitely say education as well. Not necessarily from the standpoint, of course, grants and money, how can I get investments and, that type of thing, but education on how to run our business. There's just so much information out there that we don't know. We all want to be, not all of us, but most of us want to be entrepreneurs in some aspects, right? And, it takes more than just having a product and selling it, or just, having a service and selling it. What does that look like, from an accounting standpoint? What does it look like from a marketing standpoint? When we're starting our businesses, we're starting them by ourselves. We are wearing all of the hats. So if the City of Atlanta could provide a free resource to educate small businesses on how to properly run their businesses, because a lot of people, their businesses fail because they don't know how to properly run it. So it'd be great if we had some sort of support with that and knew how to find it.
Just to piggyback on that real quick, a great example is, so Invest Atlanta, through the mayor's office, has partnered with IGA, Independent Grocers Association, or Alliance, I don't know what it's called, but it's a trade organization for small grocers. If you've ever been in a small town in America, you shopped at a grocery store that's affiliated with IGA. But now, as a grocer, I have access to their online trading platform. I have access to supply networks. I have access to all kinds of things that, as a small grocer, I don't have access to. And so that's it's literally transforming our business. And the city made a partnership. They spent the money. They're paying the bill for the first year. Hopefully, they'll pay for longer than that. But it has been absolutely amazing. So yes, you're absolutely right that it can be transformational for the city to do that for small business.
I have two things. First, bringing the resources of education and training into the community. Our small businesses, many of them consist of one person, maybe two. So it's difficult for them to shut their door and go downtown, sit in a classroom. Wonderful, wonderful resources that are given by the three organizations that I keep talking about. But sometimes,
Put your mic up.
thank you. Sometimes it's just not enough, and it only allows a certain group of small businesses to be able to take advantage of it. So you and I talked earlier about how you do programming within the community. More of that is good. The second is ensuring that business associations, be they coalitions, associations, or whatever, have an overarching system, department, focus. And I keep saying this, very similar to, but not the same as the NPU system, okay? We're not neighborhood driven. Our needs are totally different. So it couldn't look like NPU, but it could take on the same connectivity. Because all of our business associations have different characters, different needs, but we have a lot that we can draw upon. You were just talking about your resource. We could use a placer system that the city has. We could, benefit from all the data that is accumulated from various organizations. Together, we could learn best practices from one another. And we've actually seen this happen, I believe, successfully with our Main Street program, because there are 5 business districts that work together. There's some programming we do together throughout the year. And then there are others where we just work independently, but we're able to gain knowledge and best practices from one another.
Wonderful, and thank you. And I want to add to what Jeff said. We do have IGA for the grocery stores and the fresh food options. We also have ATL in Business, which is a website that offers free technical assistance for businesses that are, I don't want to say not grocery stores, but for other businesses. They can help you with your business license, or business plan, or other resources. But Ms. Myrna, you answered this question already about the communication and what we can do to really get the word out. And I want to hear from Jeff and Lakeisha. So in you all's case, what could Invest Atlanta, the Beltline, the city, what could they have done to better cater to your schedule to get the word out? I know on our end, and we spoke about this earlier, we have webinars and in-person events, because like Lakeisha said, a lot of business owners are just starting. They're coming after their 9 to 5, so they might not be able to attend a webinar in the middle of the day or even an event in the evening. So what can we do to better communicate the services that we offer?
I agree with what Myrna said. We have us have to be where people are, right? And so where are, in our schools, in our grocery stores, on our buses, where going to another meeting, and we appreciate you all here tonight, right? But I have kids at home that are waiting on dinner, right? And so we can't always be out at something special, but when you can be somewhere where we already are, and you can pick that information up, and that there's something in your brain, I'll go find that later, versus having to come to something special or go downtown or make a special trip. And so again, just being out where people are naturally are to get the information would be great.
Yeah, I definitely agree, being where the community is. But what I would love to see, even if it was like, I'm going to apply for my business license and there was a brochure that I could pick up that says, here is some resources at ATL in Business that you can reach out to. If there was a place that I know that I could go to always get some sort of information about what I need to know for my small business. There's not a lot of that. The things that I have learned along the way have just been talking to other peers, talking to people who have, businesses that have, gone through whatever it is that they've done. I've been on the ATL Business website, and it was a lot. It was a lot to read, and it's very frustrating, because especially when you have 100 other things going on in your mind, it needs to be a roadmap that is very simplified, something that we can, and I know it'd probably be a lot to keep up with if it was, some sort of document or brochure, but even if it's just like a general, guideline on here is where you can go for funding opportunities, here's where you can go for information on training, and then from there, let it lead us to wherever it needs to go. 211 for business. See, I didn't know that. Okay.
Thank you for that. 211 for business, everybody, if you didn't hear. 211. Wonderful. So, and I'm glad to hear that all you all were able to access resources. And what was the communication like, or the assistance like, after you received the resources? Because oftentimes, businesses can, receive grants or loans, and then oftentimes the funder or the city or Invest Atlanta or the Beltline will step back and say, hey, you got your money, best of luck. Did you engage with the funding provider afterwards? And if not, would you have liked to?
Well, I personally haven't had any funding. I've funded my business 100% out of my own pocket. But in working with the Beltline and the Beltline Marketplace, they have been excellent. Kara specifically, she runs that whole program. She does a good job of following up, keeping in touch, sending us offers and resources that they have up and coming. Yeah, to me, I feel like not only following up is important, but like, hey, market my business. You know, Atlanta has a huge platform, and the various different departments of Atlanta have a huge platform, and maybe they can, you know, speak about our business sometime on social media. You know, I feel like that's just important, as well as sending me an email asking me how my money's going.
I'd like to address that as well. That's one of the areas I feel has always been lacking, is follow-up. Not just the next year to see how things went and where you are, but tracking over a period of years to see if the programs really work, how they've worked, what they've benefited the recipient. And also, by keeping in touch, having sort of like teach one to reach one and pass it on. So if there could be a concise communication and connectivity and engagement on an ongoing basis, people would be more apt, I believe, to tell others about what they gained from a grant or from a program. But, you know, everybody just kind of goes away in isolation, if that makes sense.
And our experience has been lots of communication beforehand, and then the polar opposite after. And so it often has, and you asked the question, do I want to talk afterwards? And maybe I do, maybe I don't, but but for sure there's been lots of opportunity ahead of time, making sure we're doing all the things for the application, but after that, it's a report and not a whole lot else.
And it would benefit, you know, the organizations that are actually putting on these programs, so that they would have data that would support the success or where they might need to make changes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so it sounds like you want more of a community. Community, you know, we could possibly have recipients, help applicants, if they received their money, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, and they can talk about what they did, some of their roadblocks, and something similar. And including us too.
Yeah.
And us too.
But even more than that, there needs to be an overarching bureau of sort that pulls all of this together. I mean, it's only been, I think, 3 years, if that long, that the Beltline, the City of Atlanta, and Invest Atlanta have even been communicating as well as they're doing. And I've seen a tremendous improvement across the board just because that has happened. So if, you know, those 3 entities can come together and make it better for us. Just think if there was, and I'm, for lack of another term, I'm going to call it a bureau, a business bureau for the city of Atlanta, where you got it.
Oh, understood.
And I second that, right? I look at, and just again, I'm in the grocery business, right? And I know Publix has people on their team who can call your office, right, and talk to somebody, right, and get through. And you know, small business doesn't have that. And so having the bureau, having someone who's looking out for, and having coordination to where we were talking about this earlier, we have the World Cup coming in 2 years, right? Like, how is the city of Atlanta going to make sure, and the mayor announced Showcase Atlanta, whatever that's going to be, right? But is that really going to support our small business, or is when these big events come to town, are just the big corporations are able to take advantage of all this money that's coming in, or how are we really being intentional about making sure that the West End Business Association, which is a mile from Mercedes-Benz Stadium, gets to benefit just as much as the Marriott or the Hilton that was just built on Georgia World Congress Center's campus, right? That's what we need to be doing to make sure that we get this. I mean, we are a hub of activity, and we have great small businesses, and too often I think we miss the mark in making sure that our small business take advantage of what's coming.
And collective advocacy.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you all mentioned all of that, and we're going to come back to that, I'm sure. I want to touch on the business districts around the city. So what would you like to see the business districts do together to help all of the small businesses?
advocate for needs that we all have in common. You know, just like you were talking about navigating some systems, you know, be it, you know, building permits or whatever. That way we're not all operating in silos, trying to figure it out. It could be a centralized place.
I would argue if we have something that designates a business district, like you shouldn't know if you're in Polar Rock or if you're in Piedmont Heights, right? You should have this, like the city of Atlanta should say business districts have X, Y, and Z, and regardless if the businesses can pull together to fund it or not, we're going to make sure that there's these things that we value in a business district, that if you can't afford to have a CID, which funds the stuff in Midtown or Buckhead, we're as a city going to make sure that you have it, because we know transportation, sidewalks, proper facades, whatever it is, right? And having that shared amongst the business district to know these are the things that are really important to us. Let's make sure everyone has them. And again, not so siloed. Right?
I agree.
I like the amen corner.
Absolutely. So we're going to take this time to open it up for questions. Microphone is coming.
This comment was just for Lakeisha, and it's not like sort of notice, but just some information. Since I work as a librarian, I typically am involved a lot with like people who do free resources and free community events and things like that. And what I find that is an issue, it's citywide in Atlanta, like where we have the issue of not having a dedicated network for people to engage even with their NPUs, because I also go to the NPU meetings, and communication is an issue across all facets of a lot of Atlanta volunteer organizations or community organizations. But something that's great about the library is because we offer so much educational help, and because we service people who work from home, people who direct small businesses, sometimes we are, you know, people come to us a lot for printing, things of that nature. Having those type of resources, if they were created, for example, in a thing like a brochure, might be something that one of the people who works with Invest Atlanta or any of these might want to come out to our library, or even potentially like host something at a local library, because they're all across. We have 34 branches in Fulton County. And so there is not a lot of active engagement between the city and its library system, even though, again, that's where everyone meets, and that's across all demographics. So I think it's a great opportunity for education that, again, is like kind of unnoticed in our city. So I think that could be a great place for something like your idea to flourish.
I love that. I love it.
Hi. As a former grants and compliance manager for the city of Atlanta, on the private side now, one of the things I notice when doing grants and compliance for small businesses and organizations, when we used to look at applications, we wanted to know about your capacity. One of the things I see now from looking outside in, when you're awarded a grant, one of the things that would help small businesses and nonprofits would be to offer full technical assistance for the life of the grant. Because working with agencies now, on the flip side, they don't have a lot of capacity. And if you were able to provide that TA along the full life cycle of the grant, including how to submit a grant report correctly, then that would go a long way for people to continue to get additional grant money. So that is something. And there's the SBA. That is your federal money. That is tax money that pays for SBA. And they offer plenty of free training. And they have SCORE, which will give you a mentor for free. So there's the SBA, there's the Small Business Development Centers as well for information that is actually funded by our taxpayer money. Stephen?
So this is a question, like just for my own benefit, trying to learn more about civics and what to expect of the organizations that are responsible for the well-being of our city. So Ms. Fuller, you mentioned there's a hole that needs to be filled, like there's nothing akin to like a bureau of business to do some of the connecting that you were describing. Is that not a responsibility of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, or do they do something else?
I don't think it's any one entity's responsibility. We just need to do it. And I think there are 3 very strong organizations in place, already primed and supporting the business structure. I think they can work it out. And I think the chamber is a different animal. I wouldn't necessarily include them in an initiative like what I'm talking about.
Hi there, LaShondra Butler. As some of the people in the room may know, I live in South Fulton, so my area is a bit industrial. And so this point is mostly just about the communication tip and getting information out to individuals. And I feel like in connecting communities and connecting the dots of people that may work, play, whatever in Atlanta and live just in the outskirts, there's a huge community of people that may be left out of the conversation because they are working or sleeping in preparation for work. So just something to think about, that because they may be at the grocery stores, the third spaces, right, stopping into but they aren't included in these conversations. So kind of bridging that gap to make communication available for them as well, to tap into these comprehensive conversations.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Brennan. I'm here on behalf of Georgia Tech. I have sort of a question and potential answer. So I'll ask the whole thing, but I would like some feedback too. So my question is really, what can anchor institutions like Georgia Tech, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, what can they do to better support small businesses and startups with the city? And I guess the answer part of this is, going back to your point about this bureau, is there a greater opportunity to have Invest Atlanta, the city, and these anchors all get together to maybe create new grant opportunities or to help pool those resources together or do something, as small business owners, what would is there something that someone like Georgia Tech could do that would entice you to want to open a business or participate somehow with the campus community? Or
Yeah, I would say definitely grant opportunities. I mean, these days, the grant opportunities are far and few in between, but it's so hard to get one because they're so across the United States. It's easier when you're local to Atlanta to get a local grant, but there's so many people in Atlanta fighting over a grant, So creating more grant opportunities would be amazing. And, if there is an opportunity for a small business that's a coffee shop, supply coffee, reach out to them first before you reach out to Starbucks. Find opportunities where the small business can fill a void in your operations, to, help support them.
And yeah, I would agree. And to piggyback, I would say oftentimes when a large institution comes to a small business, there's a huge gap, right? Like what Georgia Tech brings to the table and what they might need is much larger than our capacity. And so we're all going to jump. Oh yeah, I mean, we look at, I would love to support, I would love to have a coffee sale of, $5,000, yes, but we don't have the staff to do that. And so make sure that the ask to our small businesses is an ask that is for them, not for the institution to check a box, and make sure that it is appropriately sized in a way that allows a business to grow and scale, and not just do a one-off large, hey, can you do this one thing for us, and we never hear from you again. But it's really a relationship, and relationships start small and they grow and they get bigger, and that's how to do it really, really well.
I would say work through the business associations, because just as he mentioned, it's almost impossible for a large institution to work with a small business. but you could get more bang for the buck, and we would be able to gain more if you worked with business associations as a whole. Like, for instance, we have a historical preservation program. We'd love to have a class that is, history majors or that are history majors. I mean, there's so many topics that are taught within our upper educational systems that could benefit business associations as a whole. And then if we were a bureau, they could benefit all of us together.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Fran. Hi, y'all. I'm Monique Nunnally. I'm actually a former educator of the Carver High School, so thank you so much for the APS for allowing us to be in this space. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. It's just so emotional for me. As a former educator, as someone who leads a EdTech solution for young people and families and parents, one of my biggest concerns is how we support talent pipeline and talent development of our young people. As I hear us having this amazing conversation about the intersectionality of education and development and support and building coalition, a lot of times it feels like our young people are out of the conversation. And sometimes I feel like it's that way due to a lot of the ways we create economic development and workforce development, because our number one trigger is tax incentives and tax abatements, and as we just saw with the Gulch project, a huge undertaking, but not a whole lot of benefit to the local small community and the small businesses. And so I'm just wondering, one, how do we bridge this? Like I called the chamber, and I asked the chamber, do we have a business directory so that when businesses come knocking, then they know the talent pipeline that exists right here at the Carver High School, right? At the Washington High School. And the answer was no. The chamber does not have, the Business Chamber of Atlanta does not have a directory. But yet and still we're giving multiple tax credits to all these different organizations and depleting our revenue streams for our schools, like this historic building that has not been renovated in 25 years. So I'm just like really, really, really excited to understand, like, what are some opportunities for us to build a inclusive talent development pipeline where our small businesses, our large institutional organizations, our chambers, metro chambers are building those bridges, and we not just walking money out the door and importing talent from all over the country when we got it right here in our backyard. So that's my big question for everybody. Thank y'all.
Love the passion. Good evening, love the passion. So my name is Miyoshi Primo, and I am from WorkSource Atlanta under the Atlanta Department of Labor and Employment Services. We're a fairly new department, so that was a perfect segue. One of the things that I wanted to say was thank you for this forum. We just came to literally be nosy and see what we can do for our department and for our youth and our adults that come through our workforce pipeline. So the first thing would be to get information to connect to those associations, to those businesses. I am also a small business owner, so Lakeisha, I understand your gripe thoroughly. So one of the things I would say is the reason why we're here, this is our own thing, we come out, and one of the things is there's been a lot of changes within the city as far as I'm concerned, right? So one of the things that we're working on now is connecting those pipelines to that workforce, to those individuals who are here in the city of Atlanta, those residents that are here in the city of Atlanta, whether it be youth or adults or those dislocated workers that come from other places. So we would love to get your information. We would love to share ours. And we're in Carver, but there's been some changes. So we had to make sure we come back to life. We redesigned the program, and we're working hard in ADOS, we call it, in our department, to make sure that we connect with those businesses and connect with those employers and also talk about their rights. So I'm excited to be here and excited to hear everything that's going on.
Stephen's going to the next person, just about the youth, and Monique, we spent a lot of time together, and I know very few small business owners who haven't at some point in time hired a teenager, right? And I think it's so important, and I mean, I know the big companies do too, but it's something different for a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old to learn from a small entrepreneur than it is just being the bagger at Publix or the cook at, in the back. And so small businesses create the environment where people can organically invest in our young people, and it goes back to the equity of how our city is designed and built. And if a kid who grows up in this neighborhood has the same opportunity as a kid who grows up somewhere else, and so having equitable development around our city, we're having the ability for a kid to walk down the street and get their first job is really, really important from someone who's going to care about not just if they show up on time, but is going to care about them and their family just as much as they care about how they work in their business. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kelly Petty. I am a resident in Lakewood Heights. And to answer the question earlier from the gentleman from Georgia Tech, so universities within the university system of Georgia do help small businesses through the UGA Small Business Center. So for those who are small businesses, please go to UGA Small Business Center, Google that. And most of the USG schools have it. So Clayton State has it, Georgia State has it, Morehouse is a private, but Morehouse has, so they have that, and that supports businesses that are trying to get started, or they can connect you to an accelerator if you're ready to scale up. So that's just some information for those who are looking for a place to get some information and resources and training. They're funded by the Small Business Administration. But my question to the panel is, we talked about business associations being supportive of business, but how do neighborhood associations, how can they help? Because oftentimes for the business owner, your first customers are the people in the residents. And so especially for those small business owners that don't live in the community, so they have the property or they lease a space, but they don't live there, how can neighborhood associations support them in being able to build up their business?
I think that's key. For the West End, our NPUT organization embraces both the business community as well as the residential. And through that, there are times when business owners like you're talking about that don't live in the community have to participate through that system, and it definitely does help. So I think it's very valuable that all NPUs, and they don't all operate the same way, where the business and the residential community work together, but they should, because it's very valuable when that happens.
When I first got started on the West End, I actually connected with the Adair Park and the Pittsburgh Yard associations, and they have been extremely helpful. You know, they have a very supportive community, you know, the Facebook pages and the emails and the newsletters, and that's amazing because we need the community to support the small business. And if you don't know that we exist, you know, because sometimes it's hard to see the plant shop sitting over here and you don't know it exists. But when, you know, the small business or the community, the neighborhood associations share that information with the members of their community, that's beneficial to us. So I think just, you know, if there is a way to let the neighborhood, an easy way, because it was hard for me to figure out who runs that. You know, if there's an easy way for the small business to be able to reach out to the neighborhood associations so that we can let them know that, hey, we are now in the neighborhood. Hey, you know, come support us. You know, let's do some sort of collaboration together. Because at the end of the day, the biggest marketing tool that works is word of mouth. You know, it beats social media, it beats, you know, door knocking, like just being able to talk to your peers and their friends and their family. That is the best way to get your business out there.
And just to speak on it from the side of neighborhoods that have businesses that maybe aren't desirable, right? Neighbors often have concerns, and to have a unified voice to go to that business, and sometimes they'll listen, sometimes they won't. I know from our experience in South Atlanta, you know, we are epicenter of tow lots, right? If you get towed anywhere in the city, you're coming down the street, right? And there's some advantages to that, but mostly there's a lot of disadvantages to living next to the tow lots. But there was one business owner who took it upon herself to come to the neighborhood association, and while she was very acknowledged, hey, I'm here for the next 20 years, but I want to be a good neighbor, right? And that's what businesses should do. Now, they aren't going to do that, but to have a relationship with neighborhood associations that help to, even with the places that we don't like, to make it a better experience for everybody, so that it's not just this adversarial, let's go out and protest the shoot 'em up Chevron, whatever they call it now down the street there at Lakewood and Jonesboro. But we as neighbors should expect more from our businesses, and we can go to them and ask for stuff and be in relationship with them.
And work together. We do cleanups, business district cleanups every other month. And we join together with the neighborhood association, and when they have concerts or tour homes or cleanups, we're there working with them. So it's another means of building community, getting things done, and getting to know each other.
Did everybody stand up? Oh. Good evening. This is a two-parter. My name is Cozy Walker, and I'm a field coordinator with Redefine Ed Atlanta. And our mission is equity and education in the APS. I'm also in that genre trying to get the community together, right, so that they can make decisions on education in the community. I'm also a resident of this community, and I have a small business as well. So one part I want to say is, it sounds like, even to some of the detriment of the others, is why isn't entrepreneurship taught in school? Why isn't business taught to children, right? Because when I grew up, the neighborhood people were the business owners. So they were one and the same. Does that make sense? My uncle was the pastor and the grocery man. Mm-hmm. So you got everything you needed right in your community. You were taught. You know, your teacher didn't just work at the school. She also was your Sunday school teacher or the treasurer. So they taught you things as we grew up. So that's just my side note to y'all educators. Start teaching them in school. Now, to my business people, you all should start going to the schools. Because children usually tell their parents what to do nowadays. Right? So if they like it, you could deny it, Jeff. Okay. But again, to me, it needs to be a mesh, right? So I hear the young lady saying that where there's an easier way in the different associations. So again, a PTA, I've always been a part of the PTA, right? And when we need stuff, we reach out to the small businesses, or the people around us, but you all never come to the schools, or we know you all. We're kind of forced to be in your space, but you not in ours. So definitely keep that in mind. Ms. Myrna, you seem like you have a lot to give. So you having a class or something, no, truly, to give to those that are up and coming. Because I feel like even crime happens because we don't respect the small business anymore. We don't know you. We don't know that you're, Jeff, a man of God. You know what I'm saying? But if a kid is hungry or just doesn't have any training, your small business is where he's going to hit first. So it's somewhat of a mesh that we've all, so when you have your bureau, have a link to educate our children as well. Now, in my second part after preaching is how do I connect? I'm a small business owner that I work from home, and in my home, I say I have 3 businesses, but I'm not a part of any small business association. I feel very alone.
You just came from a startup meeting. Don't
Man, when I was there, I took over like I'm doing now because I was super excited. It touched my soul, Jeff, to be there.
Well,
This
let
young lady.
me say that, and I'm sure other associations do the same thing, but we represent home base, brick and mortar, nonprofit, faith-based. So if you have a business, and you have a business license, you're a part of the business association. So you're not left out. You need to reach out to us. Just like
I don't know you exist, but I thank you for that. So again, it's a reach out to our communities as
Right.
well
So it's
for us
both
to come
ways,
together.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am, sure is. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sagira Jones. I am the president of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board. APAB, or Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, is comprised of 25 representatives from each of the MPUs, and our role is to advise the city on the comprehensive development plan, the city's budget, and civic engagement. So one of the things that I've heard that I need to take back to the group is ensuring that our MPUs are reaching out to businesses. I know some do and have great established relationships, and others don't. But to Ms. Fuller's point and to your point, having that connection actually helps us give input to those areas. So even if you don't attend your MPU meetings, you can find out, go to the Google MPU dashboard, and it will tell you who your contact is, and find out who is the representative for where you are, so you can provide that input, give that information directly, because it's literally our job to say, this is what development should look like in these areas and why. So for instance, Jeff, as you were talking about, this is, if we don't have a CID, how do we get the benefits of a CID? How do we get the infrastructure needed where other areas have large businesses, large institutions, and are collecting millions of dollars and able to build their own sidewalks? So I'll take this back. It's our job to help connect that bridge, but we also need help from you all to find out where you are and who you are. Until we have a comprehensive way of listing those things, it needs to be a two-way communication so that we have access to provide that input. So.
One more question.
Good evening, neighbors. Good evening, y'all.
Good evening.
Wake y'all up. My name is Mamie Moore. I'm a resident of English Avenue, and I work with the beloved community in championing the implementation of the West Side Land Use Framework Plan. I've listened intensely over this last 30, 45 minutes, and in the spirit of adding to the plan, and hopefully what I say, I'll see it somewhere in the written document when it comes out. It's twofold. Small businesses are not an isolated entity for us. Small businesses are tied to the economic redevelopment and building a healthy, sustainable English Avenue. I don't know if Invest Atlanta or the city has placed a priority on the under-resourced neighborhoods in guiding and directing our small businesses to be courageous enough to come and help rebuild an under-resourced community so that we can become economically viable. And so I'm looking for a plan A that will speak to the city's, Stephen, commitment to under-resourced communities and our economic viability. I'm new in this, But one of the things that the West Side Land Use Framework Plan created was a retail market analysis that talked about business. It says that the health of a healthy, sustainable community is its business place. And everywhere I look, small businesses, I see y'all going to be where it's going to be popular. It is not popular to be in English Avenue. I know that. But we need you. There's a mission for small businesses that got enough pioneer spirit of this America where they went to the West and they were willing to plant down their vision for themselves in barren lands. And so I would like for the city to have in the plan a priority for finding businesses that have enough courage and will match the needs of our neighborhood, because the retail market analysis distinctly speaks to the kind of businesses that should be there in order for us to lay the foundation for an economically viable, healthy, sustainable neighborhood. The second thing, are we going to talk about Brownfield? And Main Street, are we going to talk about that, or are we just going to talk about, can I talk about Brownfield?
We are actually at time, but
So Brownfield was not on the agenda, but it's on that little thing back there.
Right.
That cart, but we're not going to talk about that?
No, ma'am, not
So I
tonight.
have to figure out another way to put my thing on. Okay, thank you.
But I can talk to you after this. Yeah, I think we have a session on brownfields coming up later.
If I can just respond to that real quick, I do think one thing the city can help do is, often as neighborhoods change, businesses last. And what that means is that new folks move in, old folks move out, and the people who've been clamoring for business for so long don't get to enjoy it. And so I do think we as a city need to figure out how can we prioritize and encourage and create spaces and create opportunities for small businesses to go into places that maybe aren't ready for it yet, or maybe it's too, it doesn't make sense from an economic perspective entirely, but it makes entirely great sense from a human perspective. And we can absolutely figure out how to do that as a city. But that is absolutely is a challenge, is that we see it all time and time again. We're stone's throw from Summerhill, right? Summerhill's been an amazing neighborhood for 100 years. Last 5 years has got amazing restaurants, right? And the people who lived there for the last 30, 40, 50 years didn't get to enjoy them necessarily. So how can we get ahead of that? How can we bring stuff to English Avenue and Polar Rock and all these places around that the people want it, but the economics don't always make sense. And when they're smart enough people, Stephen works for the city of Atlanta, so we know there's smart enough people that can figure this out, to how we can do it, but it takes having the commitment to serve people first in a way that makes financial sense.
Do you have a business license? Do you have a business license? Okay, you could start there, and again, join what? We represent artists as well. You're a business owner, right? And a tremendous amount of opportunities for artists. So, hey, you're right, but you've got to spread the word for us.